The morning sun cast long shadows across the landing platform of Kepler 442b. General Tekvar stood with his massive arms crossed, watching the human transport ship descend through the orange sky. His reptilian scales gleamed dark green in the light, and his yellow eyes held nothing but contempt. The Vraxian general was 9 feet tall and built like a living tank. Thick armor plates covered his body naturally, and his claws could cut through steel like paper. Behind him stood dozens of his best warriors, all eager to see what pathetic creature the humans would send. "Sir," said Commander Vexai, one of his officers, "the human ship is requesting permission to land." Tekvar laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Let them come. I want to see this joke with my own eyes." The transport touched down with a soft hiss of engines. Steam rose from the landing thrusters as the ship settled onto the metal platform. All around the landing area, Vraxian soldiers gathered to watch. Word had spread quickly through the base that humans were actually foolish enough to accept their challenge. 3 weeks ago, Tekvar had sent a message to Earth's Colonial Defense Force. The Vraxians wanted 3 star systems that both species claimed. Instead of a long, costly war, he had offered single combat. 1 warrior from each side would fight. The winner would take all 3 systems. It was an ancient law that most species in the galaxy respected. Tekvar had used it many times before to expand Vraxian territory. No species had ever defeated a Vraxian warrior in single combat. The general expected this to be over quickly. The transport's ramp lowered with a mechanical whine. Tekvar leaned forward, expecting to see some massive human warrior march out. Maybe they had genetic modifications or powered armor. Maybe they had found their strongest fighter and enhanced him with technology. Instead, a single figure walked down the ramp. The human was small, maybe 6 feet tall and weighing perhaps 200 pounds. He wore standard colonial marine armor that looked basic compared to Vraxian war gear. A simple rifle hung across his back, and he carried a small pack. That was all. The Vraxian soldiers began to laugh. The sound echoed across the platform like thunder. Some pointed at the lone figure. Others shook their heads in disbelief. "This is it?" Tekvar roared. "This is what humanity sends? One pathetic little creature?" The human walked closer. His face was calm, showing no fear or anger at the mocking voices around him. His dark eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of the base, the soldiers, and the terrain. "I am Captain Li Wu Jin of the Colonial Defense Force," the human said in a steady voice. "I am here to accept your challenge for single combat." Tekvar's laughter boomed even louder. You are their champion?" He turned to his officers. "Look at this. They should have sent a child to make this fair." Li Wujin said nothing. He continued to study his surroundings with quiet attention. His eyes noted the positions of guards, the layout of buildings, and the rocky terrain beyond the base. "Where are the rest of your warriors, little human?" asked Commander Vexai. "Surely you brought backup." "I am sufficient," Li Wujin replied simply. This brought fresh waves of laughter from the assembled Vraxians. Some began making bets on how quickly their champion would kill the human. Most guessed less than 5 minutes. General Tekvar stepped closer to the human. Up close, the size difference was even more dramatic. The Vraxian's shadow completely covered Li Wujin. "Do you understand what you have agreed to, little one?" Tekvar asked. "This is a fight to the death. There are no rules except victory. My warrior will tear you apart with his bare claws." Li Wujin met the general's gaze without flinching. "I understand the terms. When do we begin?" "Tomorrow at dawn," Tekvar said. "We will use the combat arena 1 kilometer north of here. It is a circle of natural terrain, perfect for watching you die." The general turned to his officers. "Prepare the arena. Send word across our empire that we will broadcast this execution. Let all species see what happens when they challenge Vraxian might." As the Vraxians began to disperse, Li Wujin was escorted to guest quarters in the human diplomatic section of the base. The building was small and isolated, surrounded by Vraxian guards. Inside his room, Li Wujin set down his pack and began checking his equipment. His rifle was a standard kinetic weapon that fired metal projectiles at high speed. He had extra ammunition, a sidearm, combat knife, and basic survival gear. Nothing fancy or high-tech. Outside his window, Vraxian soldiers gathered to stare and mock. They made threatening gestures and roared challenges. Li Wujin ignored them completely. As night fell, a communication came through from Earth. Admiral Park So-young appeared on his portable screen. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and serious eyes. "Captain Lee," she said, "I need to brief you on the situation." "Yes, ma'am. 3 billion human colonists live in those disputed systems. If you lose tomorrow, they will all face Vraxian occupation. The Vraxians do not treat conquered peoples well." Li Wujin nodded. He had read the reports. Vraxian occupation meant slavery, forced labor, and worse. "I also need to tell you," the Admiral continued, "your sister Mi Kyung is on New Sol Colony in the Kepler 438 system. That is one of the 3 systems at stake." Li Wujin's expression did not change, but his hands tightened slightly. His younger sister was a teacher on the colony world. She had written to him just last week about her students. "Understood, ma'am," he said quietly. "Mission will be accomplished." Admiral Park studied his face through the screen. "Captain, I know what we are asking of you. The entire Colonial Defense Force wanted to send our best equipment, our strongest soldiers, everything we have. But the challenge was specific. 1 warrior against 1 warrior. Why did you choose me?" Li Wujin asked. The Admiral smiled slightly. "Because you graduated top of your class from the Special Operations Academy. Because you have survived situations that killed stronger men. Because you think differently than everyone else," she paused. "And because when command asked for a volunteer, you were the first to step forward." After the communication ended, Li Wujin opened his personal files. He spent hours studying everything available about Vraxian physiology, psychology, and combat methods. He learned about their enhanced strength, their natural armor, and their preference for direct attacks. He also studied the arena where they would fight. Satellite images showed rocky terrain with boulders, small cliffs, and uneven ground. Most warriors would see obstacles. Li Wujin saw opportunities. Late into the night, he maintained his equipment with careful precision. Every piece was cleaned, checked, and prepared. His movements were calm and methodical, like a ritual. Outside, the Vraxian celebration continued. They were already claiming victory, already planning how to use this propaganda success. Some talked about expanding their challenges to other species after crushing the humans. Li Wujin lay down on his simple bed and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring the fight of his life. 3 billion people were counting on him. His sister's future depended on what happened in that arena, but Captain Li Wujin had faced impossible odds before. He had learned long ago that size and strength were not everything. Intelligence, preparation, and the refusal to give up could overcome any disadvantage. As he drifted toward sleep, his last thought was simple and clear. The Vraxians expected a quick execution. Instead, they were about to learn why humanity had survived every challenge the galaxy had thrown at them. They were about to discover that sometimes 1 soldier really was enough. Dawn broke over Kepler 442b with a blood-red sunrise. Li Wujin woke before his alarm, as he always did. His body clock was trained from years of military service. Outside his window, he could hear Vraxian soldiers already gathering for the spectacle. He dressed in his combat gear slowly and carefully. Each piece of equipment was placed exactly where it needed to be. His rifle sling was adjusted to the perfect length. His ammunition was distributed for easy access. His combat knife sat in its sheath, sharp enough to cut paper. Meanwhile, across the base, General Tekvar was making his final preparations. He had chosen his champion the night before, Commander Zethrak, the finest warrior in the Vraxian military. Zethrak stood over 10 feet tall, even bigger than the general. His natural armor was thicker than most, and cybernetic enhancements made him even deadlier. Metal implants reinforced his bones. Computer systems enhanced his reflexes. A plasma cannon was built directly into his left arm. "Are you ready to crush this human insect?" Tekvar asked his champion. Zethrak flexed his massive claws. "I will make it quick, General. Though I admit I am disappointed. I expected more of a challenge." "The human's death will serve a purpose," Tekvar said. "Every species in the galaxy will see this broadcast. They will learn what happens when anyone opposes the Vraxian Empire." The arena was a natural formation 1 kilometer north of the base. It was a perfect circle of rocky ground about 1 kilometer across. Ancient lava flows had created a landscape of boulders, small cliffs, and uneven terrain. Elevated platforms around the edge provided seating for thousands of Vraxian spectators. As the morning progressed, transport ships arrived from across the Vraxian Empire. Military officers, government officials, and wealthy citizens came to watch the execution. Betting was heavy, with most wagers on how quickly the human would die. The event was broadcast live across Vraxian space. Viewing parties were held on military ships and colony worlds. This was more than entertainment. It was propaganda designed to show Vraxian superiority. Li Wujin was escorted to the arena under heavy guard. Vraxian soldiers lined the path, roaring insults and threats. Some threw rocks that bounced off his armor. Others made throat-cutting gestures. The human captain walked through it all with calm dignity. His face showed no fear, no anger, no reaction at all. He simply observed everything around him with those dark, intelligent eyes. At the arena, temporary command posts had been set up for both sides. The Vraxian section was elaborate, with comfortable seating and communication equipment. The human section was just a single chair and a basic radio. "Any last words?" General Thekvar asked as they reached the arena entrance. Li Wujin checked his equipment one final time. "Thank you for the opportunity to serve my people." Thekvar laughed. "Your people will remember you as a fool who threw his life away." The crowd in the viewing platforms was already cheering. Thousands of Vraxians had gathered to watch their champion destroy the lone human. The noise was deafening, like the roar of an ocean storm. Zethrak entered the arena first. His appearance brought thunderous applause. He raised his arms to acknowledge the crowd, showing off his massive frame and gleaming cybernetic implants. His plasma cannon charged with a high-pitched whine. Then Li Wujin entered from the opposite side. The crowd's reaction was very different. Laughter rippled through the stands. Some spectators pointed and shook their heads. Others made jokes about the size difference. A few even felt sorry for what they saw as a brave but foolish sacrifice. The two warriors stood at opposite ends of the arena, separated by rough terrain. The contrast was dramatic. Zethrak looked like a living weapon of war. Li Wujin looked like a regular soldier who had wandered into the wrong fight. General Thekvar activated the arena's communication system. His voice boomed across the stands and the broadcast channels. "Citizens of the Vraxian Empire, today we witness the foolishness of humanity. They send one small warrior against our greatest champion. Let this be a lesson to all who would challenge our might." The crowd roared approval. Bets were finalized. Recording equipment focused on both fighters. Li Wujin used these moments to study the arena carefully. His eyes traced paths between rocks, noted the height of cliffs and calculated distances. To most observers, he looked nervous. In reality, he was gathering tactical information. Zethrak, meanwhile, was playing to the crowd. He flexed his muscles and tested his weapons. Plasma energy crackled around his left arm. His claws extended to their full length, gleaming like knives. "Begin," General Thekvar commanded. The crowd expected Zethrak to charge forward and end the fight in seconds. Many had their recording devices ready to capture the moment of impact. Instead, something unexpected happened. Li Wujin ran, but he did not run away from his opponent. He ran to the side, using the rocky terrain to break line of sight. He moved with surprising speed and agility, leaping over small boulders and sliding under overhangs. Zethrak paused, confused by this tactic. He had expected the human to either charge bravely to his death or cower in fear. Running sideways had not been considered. "Coward," some Vraxians shouted from the stands. "Face our champion." But Li Wujin continued his circular movement around the arena's edge. He used every piece of cover available, staying hidden behind rocks and terrain features. Zethrak began to pursue, but his massive size made moving through the terrain difficult. Rocks that Li Wujin could slip between blocked the Vraxian warrior completely. Spaces the human could slide under were too small for his opponent. The first plasma shots came 5 minutes into the fight. Zethrak had grown impatient with the chase and began firing at shadows and movement. The energy blasts shattered rocks and left glowing craters, but they consistently missed their target. The crowd's cheers began to fade. This was not the quick execution they had expected. Some started to look confused. Others grew annoyed at the delay. General Thekvar frowned as he watched the display screens. "What is that human doing?" he muttered. "He is afraid," suggested Commander Vexhai. "He runs because he knows death awaits." But Thekvar was not so sure. The human's movement seemed too purposeful, too planned. This did not look like panicked flight. It looked almost like strategy. As the minutes stretched on, a subtle change began to occur. Zethrak, despite his enhanced physiology, started to show signs of effort. Chasing a quick, agile target through difficult terrain was more tiring than expected. His plasma shots became less frequent as he focused on movement. His breathing grew heavier as he climbed over obstacles and squeezed through tight spaces. Li Wu-jin, meanwhile, seemed to move with endless energy. He flowed through the terrain like water, always staying just out of reach, always finding new paths and hiding spots. The crowd grew restless. This was supposed to be a quick demonstration of power, not a prolonged chase scene. Some spectators began to boo. Others demanded action. But in the command area, a few intelligent Varaxian officers were starting to realize something troubling. The human was not running randomly. Every movement served a purpose. Every path was chosen carefully. He was not fleeing in terror. He was conducting warfare, and somehow, impossibly, he was winning the first phase of the battle without firing a single shot. The great Varaxian champion, enhanced with cybernetics and armed with superior weapons, was being led around the arena like a hunting animal following bait. General Tekvar's confident smile began to fade as he realized that maybe, just maybe, the humans had not sent a sacrificial victim after all. 30 minutes had passed since the fight began, and the crowd was growing angry. What should have been a quick execution had turned into a frustrating game of hide-and-seek. Varaxian spectators shouted insults and demands for action. "End this," someone yelled from the stands. "Kill the coward," screamed another. But Li Wu-jin was not acting like a coward. His movements through the rocky terrain were precise and calculated. Every step served a purpose that was becoming clearer with each passing minute. Zethrak was breathing heavily now. His cybernetic enhancements made him stronger and faster than any normal Varaxian, but they also consumed energy. Chasing his elusive opponent across difficult ground was draining his power reserves. The Varaxian champion paused behind a large boulder, trying to catch his breath. His targeting systems were having trouble locking onto the human, who seemed to disappear and reappear like smoke. "Where are you, little human?" Zethrak roared in frustration. "Face me with honor." Li Wu-jin's voice came from somewhere among the rocks, calm and clear. "Honor is not charging blindly to your death. Honor is protecting those who depend on you." The response came from a different direction than expected. Zethrak spun around, firing his plasma cannon at the sound. The energy blast vaporized a section of rock wall, but the human was already gone. In the command area, General Tekvar studied the tactical displays with growing concern. Heat sensors showed both fighters' positions, but the human's movement pattern was unlike anything in Varaxian military doctrine. "He is mapping the entire arena," observed Commander Vexhai. "Every route, every hiding spot, every advantage." "Impossible," Tekvar growled. "No warrior can learn terrain that quickly." But the evidence was clear on their screens. Li Wu-jin had covered nearly every meter of the arena in his running pattern. He knew where every rock sat, where every cliff edge dropped off, where every shadow fell. More importantly, he was learning about his opponent. Every time Zethrak fired his plasma cannon, the human observed the weapon's range, power, and recharge time. Every time the Varaxian warrior moved, Li Wu-jin studied his speed, stamina, and reactions. The chase continued, but now Li Wu-jin began to take more risks. Instead of staying completely hidden, he allowed brief glimpses of himself. Each appearance drew plasma fire, but he was never quite where Zethrak expected him to be. "He is playing with our champion," muttered a Varaxian officer in the stands. The realization was spreading through the crowd. This small human was not running in terror. He was conducting a careful study of his enemy while avoiding damage. It was tactical brilliance disguised as cowardice. Zethrak's frustration grew with each missed shot. His plasma cannon was overheating from constant use. Warning lights flashed on his cybernetic display systems. He needed to end this fight quickly before his equipment failed. That was exactly what Li Wu-jin had been waiting for. The human suddenly changed his pattern. Instead of running away, he began moving in toward the center of the arena. He used a series of small jumps and slides to advance from cover to cover. Zethrak saw his chance and charged forward, firing rapidly. Plasma bolts lit up the arena like lightning. The crowd roared with excitement, thinking the end had finally come. But Li Wu-jin was no longer where the shots were aimed. His study of the terrain paid off as he used a hidden passage between two large rocks. He emerged behind his opponent, unseen and unheard. For the first time in the fight, Li Wu-jin raised his rifle. The first shot was precise and calculated. The kinetic round struck Zethrak's plasma cannon, damaging the focusing array. The weapon sparked and went offline, warning alarms blaring. The second shot hit the Vraxian's left knee joint, cracking the natural armor plating. Zethrak stumbled, but did not fall. The crowd fell silent in shock. The human had weapons that could hurt their champion. Zethrak spun around with a roar of rage and pain. His cybernetic systems boosted his speed as he lunged forward with extended claws. This was the close combat he understood, the killing zone where his size and strength would dominate. But Li Wujin was already moving again. He rolled to the side and came up running, disappearing behind another cluster of rocks. His shots had not been meant to kill. They were surgical strikes to level the playing field. Clever little insect, Zethrak snarled. His main weapon was damaged, but he still had backup systems and his natural weapons. You cannot run forever. I am not running, Li Wujin called back. I am hunting. The word sent a chill through the Vraxian command. Hunting was their word, their concept. Prey was supposed to run while predators pursued. The roles were not supposed to reverse. Li Wujin proved his point with his next move. Instead of continuing to evade, he began his own pursuit. Using his knowledge of the terrain, he started herding Zethrak towards specific areas of the arena. The Vraxian warrior found himself being pushed into disadvantageous positions. When he tried to use his strength to smash through obstacles, he discovered that the human had anticipated this. Loose rocks became avalanches. Stable surfaces gave way under his weight. Small traps began to appear. A tripwire made from equipment cord sent Zethrak stumbling. Carefully balanced stones fell at exactly the wrong moment. None of the tricks were deadly, but they accumulated damage and frustration. The crowd watched in growing amazement as their unstoppable champion was systematically dismantled by what they had dismissed as a pathetic opponent. The human used intelligence where the Vraxian used strength. He employed strategy where his enemy relied on brute force. This is impossible, whispered a Vraxian general in the stands. One small human cannot defeat our greatest warrior. But the evidence was clear on the arena floor. Zethrak was damaged, tired, and increasingly desperate. His cybernetic enhancements were failing one by one. His natural armor was cracked in several places. Li Wujin, meanwhile, had barely expended half his ammunition. His movements remained smooth and controlled. His breathing stayed steady and calm. The dance was entering its final phase, and everyone watching was beginning to realize that they had witnessed something unprecedented. A single human soldier was proving that size and strength meant nothing against superior tactics and unbreakable will. In the command area, General Thekvar stared at the displays in growing horror. This was supposed to be a demonstration of Vraxian superiority. Instead, it was becoming a lesson in human adaptability. The worst part was that the fight was being broadcast across the galaxy. Every species would see this. Every potential enemy would learn that humans were far more dangerous than they appeared. Zethrak let out a roar of pure rage that echoed across the arena. He abandoned all strategy and began smashing everything in sight, trying to deny his opponent any cover or advantage. But Li Wujin had planned for this too. As rocks flew and dust filled the air, he used the chaos to position himself for the final confrontation. The dance was almost over, and only one warrior would be left standing. The arena floor was covered in dust and debris from Zethrak's rampage. The Vraxian champion stood in the center, breathing heavily, his cybernetic systems flashing warning lights. Around him lay the wreckage of rocks and boulders he had smashed in his fury. Li Wujin watched from a concealed position, noting how his opponent's movements had become less coordinated. The cybernetic enhancements that made Zethrak so deadly also had a weakness. They required enormous amounts of energy to function. The human had spent over an hour leading his enemy through the most difficult terrain in the arena. Every jump, every charge, every missed attack had drained the Vraxian's power reserves. Now those systems were beginning to fail. Show yourself, coward, Zethrak roared, his voice echoing off the arena walls. Fight me with honor. Li Wujin stepped out from behind a pile of rubble, but only for a moment. Just long enough for Zethrak to see him and charge forward with a burst of enhanced speed. The human was gone before the Vraxian reached the spot, but he had left something behind. Zethrak's foot caught in a carefully placed loop of equipment cord. The giant warrior stumbled and crashed into a rock wall. It was not enough to seriously injure him, but it added to his mounting frustration. Each small trap, each moment of confusion, each wasted effort was part of Li Wujin's larger strategy. In the viewing stands, the crowd was no longer cheering. They watched in tense silence as their champion was systematically worn down by an opponent who seemed to turn every disadvantage into an advantage. "How is this possible?" asked a Vraxian military officer. "Zethrak is our finest warrior. His enhancements make him nearly unstoppable." "Nearly," replied an old general who had fought in many wars. "That human has found the weakness in our champion's strength. Power without wisdom is just destruction." General Thekver heard the comment and snarled. "Silence! Zethrak will crush this insect. It is only a matter of time." But privately, the general was beginning to have doubts. This fight should have ended in minutes. Instead, it had become a demonstration of tactical skills that impressed even experienced military minds. Li Wujin appeared again, this time on a small cliff overlooking the arena's center. He had somehow climbed up without being seen. For a moment he stood exposed, an easy target. Zethrak raised his damaged plasma cannon and fired. The weapon sparked and overloaded, completely burning out its focusing systems. The shot went wide, blasting a hole in the arena wall. Before the Vraxian could react, Li Wujin fired twice with his kinetic rifle. The first shot damaged Zethrak's right shoulder armor. The second shot hit his left ankle, cracking more of his natural protection. Neither shot was meant to kill, but both served their purpose. The damage was accumulating, weakening the Vraxian's advantages piece by piece. Zethrak tried to climb up to reach his tormentor, but his damaged ankle could not support his weight properly. He fell back down, landing hard on the rocky ground. "You fight like a scavenger," he shouted up at the human. "No honor, no courage, just tricks and traps." Li Wujin's reply was calm and measured. "I fight to win. My people do not have the luxury of dying with honor while their families become slaves." The words stung because they were true. This was not a sporting contest or a test of personal courage. It was a battle for the freedom of 3 billion human colonists. The human disappeared from the cliff edge, using a rope to rappel down the far side. By the time Zethrak limped around to find him, Li Wujin had vanished again into the rocky terrain. But now the nature of the fight was changing. Instead of running and hiding, Li Wujin began to stalk his opponent. Using smoke grenades from his pack, he created patches of concealment throughout the arena. Zethrak found himself jumping at shadows, spinning toward sounds that turned out to be nothing. His enemy seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, appearing just long enough to take a shot before melting away again. The psychological pressure was as effective as the physical damage. Zethrak had been trained to dominate through fear and superior firepower. He did not know how to fight an opponent who refused to be intimidated. A flashbang grenade detonated near his feet, temporarily blinding his optical sensors. In the confusion that followed, Li Wujin struck again. This time his shots targeted the power connections of Zethrak's cybernetic systems. Sparks flew as circuits overloaded. Warning alarms filled the air. The Vraxian champion staggered as his enhanced reflexes began to fail. "Impossible," he gasped. "My systems are military grade. They cannot be defeated by primitive weapons." "Every system has weaknesses." Li Wujin's voice came from the smoke. "You just have to know where to look." The human had studied Vraxian technology for hours before the fight. He knew exactly which components were most vulnerable to kinetic impacts. His shots were not random. They were surgical strikes against critical systems. Zethrak's left arm servo locked up, leaving his natural claws extended but unable to retract. His right leg actuator began stuttering, making his movements jerky and unpredictable. In the command area, General Tekvar watched his champion's vital signs with growing alarm. Power levels were dropping. System failures were cascading through the cybernetic network. "Sir," said Commander Vexhai quietly, "perhaps we should consider stopping the fight. Zethrak's life signs are becoming critical." "Never," Tekvar snarled. "He is still the superior warrior. He will find a way to win." But even as he spoke the words, the general knew they were becoming less believable with each passing minute. Li Wujin emerged from a smoke cloud directly in front of his opponent. For a moment, the two warriors stood face to face, only 10 meters apart. Zethrak lunged forward with his remaining strength, claws extended for a killing blow. His size and reach should have made this an easy victory. Instead, Li Wujin dropped to one knee and rolled backward, coming up with his rifle aimed at Zethrak's chest. The shot was perfect, striking the main power coupling for the cybernetic systems. Electricity arced across the Vraxian's body as his enhancements shut down one by one. Without their support, his massive frame suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Zethrak fell to his knees, struggling to function without the systems he had relied on for so long. His natural strength was still formidable, but he was no longer the unstoppable force that had entered the arena. Li Wujin stood over his fallen opponent, rifle ready but not yet delivering the final shot. In the sudden quiet, his voice carried clearly across the arena. "You called me pathetic," he said to General Tekvar, "but I am still standing and your champion is not." The crowd was completely silent now. The impossible had happened. A single human had brought down the greatest warrior in the Vraxian military using nothing but intelligence, preparation, and unbreakable determination. The hunter had indeed become the hunted, and the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The arena had fallen completely silent. 10,000 Vraxian spectators sat in stunned disbelief, watching their greatest champion kneel defeated on the rocky ground. Zethrak's cybernetic systems sparked and failed one by one, leaving him weakened and struggling to move. Li Wujin stood 5 meters away, his rifle trained on his opponent but not yet firing the killing shot. His breathing was steady, his stance calm. After more than an hour of intense combat, he showed no signs of exhaustion. In the command area, General Tekvar stared at the tactical displays in horror. This was supposed to be a demonstration of Vraxian superiority broadcast across the galaxy. Instead, it had become a humiliating defeat that would be remembered for generations. "Sir," whispered Commander Vexhai, "what are your orders?" Tekvar said nothing. His mind was reeling from what he had witnessed. Everything he believed about Vraxian military supremacy had been shattered by one human soldier with basic equipment. On the arena floor, Zethrak raised his head with great effort. His natural armor was cracked, his cybernetic systems were dead, and his body ached from dozens of precisely placed impacts. "Finish it, human," he gasped. "You have won. Take your victory." Li Wujin did not lower his weapon, but neither did he fire. "Why should I kill a defeated opponent?" "Because that is what warriors do," Zethrak replied. "The strong destroy the weak. It is the way of the universe." "No," Li Wujin said quietly. "That is the way of bullies. Warriors protect those who cannot protect themselves." He took a step closer to his fallen enemy, still keeping his rifle ready. "You want to know why humanity sent only one soldier to face your entire military?" Zethrak looked up at him with confusion and growing curiosity. "Because one is all we ever need," Li Wujin continued. "Not because we are stronger than you. Not because our weapons are better, but because we fight differently." The human's voice carried across the silent arena, reaching every spectator and broadcasting to millions across the galaxy. "You train your warriors to dominate through fear and superior firepower. You rely on size, strength, and technology to crush your enemies." Li Wujin gestured toward the rocky terrain around them. "But we learned to survive on a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to adapt, to think, to turn every disadvantage into an advantage." He looked up at General Tekvar in the command area. "You expected me to charge straight at your champion and die gloriously. That would have made good propaganda for your empire. Instead, I studied your tactics, learned your weaknesses, and used your own strength against you. I turned this arena into my weapon and your champion's power into his weakness." Zethrak struggled to understand. "But you are so small, so weak. How can you defeat superior forces? Because size does not matter if you cannot hit your target. Strength does not matter if you waste it on useless attacks. Technology does not matter if your enemy understands it better than you do." Li Wujin offered his hand to help Zethrak stand. "I studied your people for months before coming here. I learned about your culture, your military doctrine, your psychology. You studied nothing about humans except our size." The Vraxian champion stared at the offered hand in amazement. No enemy had ever shown him mercy before. The concept was alien to his warrior culture. "You would help me stand?" "After defeating me?" "A true warrior shows strength through mercy, not cruelty," Li Wujin replied. "Your people need warriors, not martyrs. Live and learn something from this defeat." Slowly, painfully, Zethrak accepted the human's help and rose to his feet. The crowd watched in absolute silence as the two warriors faced each other with mutual respect instead of hatred. "I yield," Zethrak said formally. "The victory is yours and the honor belongs to humanity." Li Wujin nodded and lowered his weapon. "The victory belongs to the 3 billion people who can now live free." General Tekvar's voice boomed across the arena communication system, thick with rage and humiliation. "This is impossible. No single warrior can defeat the Vraxian military." Li Wujin looked up at the command platform. "General, you sent your best warrior, supported by your entire empire, against one soldier with basic equipment. Who was really being pathetic?" The words hit like a physical blow. Around the arena, Vraxian officers and spectators began to murmur among themselves. The human was right. They had brought their finest champion, their best technology, their overwhelming numbers, and still lost to a single enemy. "By the ancient laws of combat," Li Wujin announced, "the disputed territories belong to humanity. The Colonial Defense Force claims the Kepler 438, Kepler 442, and Kepler 186 systems." Tekvar wanted to refuse, to claim the fight was invalid somehow, but thousands of witnesses had seen the combat. The broadcast had reached across the galaxy. To break the ancient laws now would destroy Vraxian honor forever. The territories are yours," he said through gritted teeth. Li Wujin began walking toward the arena exit. His mission complete, as he passed groups of Vraxian soldiers, many stepped aside with something approaching respect. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a masterclass in tactical warfare from an opponent they had dismissed as insignificant. At the exit, he paused and looked back at General Tekvar one final time. "General, you asked me to explain why we only sent one soldier. Here is your answer. We sent one because we knew that one would be enough. Not because we are arrogant, but because we understand warfare better than you do. Your champion was brave and strong. But bravery without wisdom is just stupidity. Strength without strategy is just waste. You focused on power and forgot about intelligence." Li Wujin shouldered his rifle and walked out of the arena. Behind him, 10,000 Vraxians sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. Hours later, as his transport ship lifted off from Kepler 442b, Li Wujin received a communication from Admiral Park So-young. Her face appeared on his screen, showing a mixture of relief and pride. "Captain Li," she said, "the entire Colonial Defense Force is proud of you. You have secured the freedom of 3 billion people." "Thank you, ma'am." "Just doing my duty," the Admiral smiled. "Your sister Mi-kyung sent a message. She says the children in her class want to hear the whole story when you get home." Li Wujin allowed himself a small smile. "I will be happy to tell them. They should know that sometimes brain beats brawn." As his ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying him back toward human territory, the news of his victory spread across the galaxy. Every species learned the same lesson that day. Never underestimate an enemy based on their size. Humanity had proven that one soldier, properly trained and intelligently deployed, could accomplish what armies could not. They had shown that adaptability and tactics could overcome any advantage in size or technology. The Vraxian Empire would never again dismiss humans as weak or pathetic. Neither would any other species in the galaxy. And in the disputed systems, 3 billion colonists celebrated their freedom, knowing they owed it all to one man who refused to give up when the odds seemed impossible. Captain Li Wujin had proven that sometimes one really is enough.